All right, we're back. So again, we're COMP305. It's week 13, lesson 13, part 2 of our broadcast. And we just kind of talked about how to make a mini-map. Mine works, but for some people, it's not working right? In fact, it won't even show up at all, right? Again, part of the complexity for this one is setting up the game the way I've done, where I've got my canvas and my mini-map here. Notice how I have my mini-map material in here, right? I haven't changed any of the properties. I've just made a simple mini-map render. And if you notice how, if it doesn't pop up like this, if it doesn't show the mini-map like this, then you know there's a problem, right? Because it should. I'm projecting my camera, my Minimap Cam is using my Minimap texture, right? And it's projecting on there. It's actually a surface to project on. That's what's happening. I've also changed my depth to 1. Make sure you do that, right? Because that may also be the cause of the problem, right? But let's just to keep everyone on the same, at the same place. Let's upload to GitHub. Remember how we did that? I'm going to go and create a new. I made a new repository here, COMP305 lesson 13. And in order for me to do that, I got to save my scene, save my project. That's the right way to do it. Close Unity down, right? Otherwise, it'll reserve certain files in the system. And what I want to do here on command line, I want to go CD, and I want to kind of dive into the Unity lesson here that I've got, COMP305 lesson 13, and drag and drop it into my terminal or console in your particular case. And when I go in here, I'm in. If I do a list or a directory on the Windows systems, I get my assets. I want to set up a Git repository right here. So I'm going to say git add dot, or git init first, and then git add dot, which adds all my assets to the repository. And then I make a commit message, git commit -n. This is all review. And I'm going to call this initial commit. Good. Now I want to push it to the repository, but I don't have a repository connected to mine, right? So if you remember what we do, we go up here, we can grab the script right from the repo up online on GitHub, and then paste it into our terminal and press enter. And when I do that, I've got my cloud repository connected. Now I'm going to do a git push -u origin master. This is going to push everything up to GitHub. Now you should be able to go there on GitHub and grab my project, and so we can kick off from the same place we were before. So somehow, if it wasn't working, you have a kind of a sample project of how it's working. Okay, I'm going to have to shut the lights now so we can all see. So I'll give you a minute to grab that, and then I'll continue. Here's something we talked about before, right? When I said projects are huge, right? How big is my COMP305 lesson 13? Now, let's see what my Mac says. I'm going to right-click onto it and get info on it. And it's saying that this project file, and I've only done one asset package, right, is 25 megs around, 25 megs. Okay, so can you imagine a massive package, right, like you guys have been giving me, which is like 200 megs, and it's all going on Dropbox up on eCentennial. It's massive. Like, we're going to fill up Dropbox quick, right? We can't do that. All right, so please, a link to GitHub and a build, which we're going to talk about later. Okay. So that's this. I'm hoping that, has everyone downloaded my package from GitHub? Franco, you downloaded or downloaded?
Yeah.
Anyone else not get it? Because I want to continue from here. Guys? Got it? You got it from GitHub already in the back?
Yeah.
You good? Okay, good. All right, let's continue. So again, I have to relaunch Unity. So I'm going to go back to Unity, right? Now let's get there and we'll continue the demo. Okay, here we go. Let's, again, even though I'm reloading, I'm testing again, right? I'm always testing to see if it's still going to do what I'm supposed to do. There it is. Okay, cool. So I've got this piece done. I want to add my player marker right now, because one of the things with the Minimap is the player marker should be showing, right? I don't have my player marker. In fact, my player is just an invisible capsule right now. It's invisible, right? That's the trick we're doing here, right? Well, I've imported some assets, and I have to modify these assets in order for me to use them properly. So I'm going to go to my player texture, and I'm going to change where it says the alpha is transparency selection. I'm going to click on that, and then click apply, so that it takes away that black area and it makes it transparent. I'm going to do the same thing to my enemy. Might as well, right? So I'm going to go here and click alpha as transparency and click apply, and that's done, right? There it is. Enemy and player. Okay, cool. So now that I've got that done, I can use my player texture, but I need a material, right? So I'm going to go back to materials, and I'm going to create a player material and an enemy material. And let's set those up. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to create a sample material. Here it is. And this is just going to be renamed player. And we'll do it again. Another material, which we're going to call enemy. So player material, enemy material. In my player material, I'm going to drag and drop my albedo in there. Okay, but there's a special thing you have to do to change your material type, and I'll show you this in a second. So here's my player texture. I'm dragging it onto the albedo section, right? But it looks like this, like green, right? This isn't correct. You have to change the rendering mode from opaque to cutout, okay? Which gives us the look and feel. Now you'll see an image that looks like this. This is the correct image to see. Let's do the same thing for the enemy while we're at it. So we'll click on enemy, right? Well, actually, let's go to the materials, click on the enemy material, drag our enemy texture onto the material, into the albedo section, and change our rendering mode from opaque to cutout. Right? And again, we want to do this so that way we can see the triangle without black around it, right? Okay, cool. You guys all right? Okay, let's go back to our player now. I want to add something to contain my marker, right? What should I add? And we've done this before when we used the gun tutorial. Remember we made the first-person gun tutorial. What would I add to house or contain my marker? I've got a material, I've got a texture, but I need to add something. Could do a sprite. Anyone else? How about Vanessa in front of me right here, who's nice and quiet? She's like shaking her head. No, I don't want to do it. Right? How about anyone in the back? Right? How about Max? Max, what would I do if I want to add a marker to my player? What do I do? And it's got to be. It's going to house my image, my texture. I've done this before in my demo, right? Do you remember? You'll pass, right? I love it, Jonathan. It could be an empty game object, but you need to. It has to house. You're close. It has to house my material. It's got to be a game object, right? So, but it's got to be a special type of game object. It's gonna be flat. What game objects are flat? It could be a sprite, but I need a quad, is what it's called, right? We did it before when we made our Minimap. You know, when we kind of did our focus, where the barrel would focus in on our target. When we made our target, we had a quad. We're gonna do the same thing for this one. So we're gonna keep the player selected, and we're going to right-click, and we're going to go 3D object, and we're going to go to quad. Right, there it is. Now, that's wrong, right? It's kind of like this. We want to rotate this so it's a different orientation, and I want to go to my rotation. If you don't know how to orient this, if you're doing it by yourself, click on this, and you want to kind of rotate it. And notice I'm rotating on the x-axis, and I want to make sure that this is 90 degrees. Right, so there it is. Now it's flat. Okay, cool. I don't have a material on this quad, right? And what I want to do is I'm going to go to materials, grab my player material, and drag it until it connects with my add component button, and it turns the cursor to a plus, a green plus. When I do that, now I can see the little arrow that's up here, right? Hey, look what the arrow has. There's a couple problems. One is it has a shadow. Do I want my arrow to have a shadow? That's a problem, right? So I can take that off by going to Cast Shadows in the Mesh Renderer section and turn it off. And then where it says Receive Shadows, I don't want it to receive shadows either, so I'm going to turn that off. Right? And then I want to move it back into inside the character. Right? So I want to say where my position, it's going to go from my Z position where I pulled it out. I'm going to go make sure it's back so that it's a 0 position. There's another problem, right? We're going to see in a second. So let's play the minimap and see what we see. Okay, cool. Oh, I see my texture, man. What's wrong? I have to, this is a problem, right? I can't run around like an arrow. Look, it looks like an arrow happening over here. This is wrong, man. Something's not right. And it's too small, right? Like, I mean, if you look on the left, my minimap, it's like a really small arrow. So how do I How do I not see the arrow with my main camera? I don't want to see it with my main player camera. That's a problem, right? How do I get rid of that? Layers, right? That's what I do. I take care of this with my layer options. Okay, so let's do that. So with my quad, first of all, let's rename my quad, right? We're going to rename this to marker. You can call it player marker as well if you want to be very specific. And right now that it's in the default layer, right? So I want to change my default layer, and I don't have a layer that makes sense. So I'm going to go to add layer. And what am I going to call this layer? Minimap, just to make it easy, right? Minimap, right? Once I've got my minimap layer, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign my marker to the minimap layer, right, in order for us not to be able to see it on the screen. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a great day. All right. So here's our minimap layer. And let's take a look at our marker. And we have to change the layer from default to minimap. There we go. Okay, cool. But it's still going to appear because our player camera, when it looks like the calling mask sees everything, right? The calling mask can't see everything. It has to only see everything but the minimap. So I'm going to click off the minimap here. Okay, cool. So anything on the minimap layer, it's not going to see. And if I was to do that, if I press play, now you notice that I don't see that annoying arrow anymore, but I do see it on my minimap. It is still quite small. And the way to fix that is to bring the marker down closer to the ground, right? Now, that's one. The other thing to do is I can increase this, I can kind of bring my camera lower, right? So the camera sees my player a little bit more clearly, right? Well, let's lower this thing so it's a little bit closer to the ground. I don't want to make my marker too close, right? Because that would be a problem. So let's do that. Let's kind of move my marker. I'm going to click on my my manipulator arm here and put it down to the ground. Now here's a problem. I don't want to make it so it goes into the ground. That's bad, right? Because I won't see it, right? I want to make it kind of rise up a little bit, but not too close to the ground. And the reason for that is because if it's too close to the ground, when I go over the terrain, it'll disappear. Let's see if my minimap or my map eats my marker. Let's see how that works. All right, first of all, here I am, and I'm running. And if I go over the hill, does my map eat my marker? No, it's pretty good here, right? Still a little bit of an issue. I think it's my map is probably, my camera is way too high, right? So instead of being 20 units up, let's make it down, move down to 15 units. Right, so that's where my camera, I'm adjusting my camera. My Minimap camera is being adjusted to 15 units. That's a little better. Right now when I look, I also don't see as much of the map, right, which is kind of cool, right? So running, and then there it is. I can see my stuff, and I see my character marker there, no problem. Okay, cool. Got my character marker. I've got my Minimap. It's all good. It's all golden, right? All right. Let's use my player and put him, make him as a prefab, create a prefab for my player, so that way I can always go back and put him back into different scenes if I need to, right? So I'm going to grab my player, go into my prefabs folder, and drag and drop my player into my prefabs folder, right? There we go. Okay, cool. Now that I've got that done, my player's in there. Has everyone got the Minimap working? The little thing you still haven't done it when you downloaded it from? Did you download it from GitHub and it still doesn't work? Still? What the hell? Still that great. What version of Unity do you have? You should have 5.23 like I do. How about that? Right? I think that's the right one. Did you update lately? Right. Okay. You should. It's coming up in December. When is it? There should be another update soon too. Which one? If it's FB? Let me look at mine. So if I go to About Unity, my version is 5.23 F1. Huh? 5.2.1? If you don't have 5.2, I guess that's the issue, right? Well, let's do it. Just make sure. If you want me to, I can try again. Like I do it with. you know, I mean, I can. It should work though. That's something that, I mean, I haven't done anything different here, and it actually worked on earlier versions, right? So, and there might be something that I'm missing. And one thing to check is, again, if you look at our what I'm seeing here, this is what the Minimap will look like on our canvas. If I pull back out, you should see this on your canvas. If you don't see this on your canvas or in your game, if I click on my game, if I don't see this in my game, you know it's not going to work, right? Because the image, which is in my canvas, my Minimap image, right? It's got to show a material, which is Minimap. Notice how if I looked at the camera, which is my Minimap Cam, it doesn't show image, but rather a texture. So it has to have those two things. Now remember, this also is a pro feature, right? Which they've probably enabled for us over the last version or so, right? Otherwise, you can't see this little Minimap. Okay. So back to getting the stuff done. We got most of it done. But now let's add some enemies, right? Because we want to add some capsules. Those annoying, angry capsules, right? They're going to come at us, right? They want to eat us. And I'm going to kind of focus on my player for a second. There it is. And I'm going to create a capsule right here where my player is. So on my player, right, I'm going to kind of create a capsule so it's the same location. Right-click. I'm going to go 3D object, capsule. Yeah, there it is. Well, I don't want this to be part of my player. I want it to be on its own. I'm just using the location. And I'm going to rename the capsule from capsule to enemy, right? Let's do that. Capsule to enemy. Okay, cool. There it is. Pull it aside. And we need a material for this capsule, but we already have one, right? We have the player material. Oh, man. Oh, man. The player material is like, it's red. It's like it's got the red marker. So that's a problem. Let's go back to my materials. So I've got my enemy material, my enemy material is red, but it's a marker that I want. So let's rename this material from enemy. I'll rename it to enemy marker. Right, so we know what it is. Here's our enemy marker. And let's make a new material for the player. Right-click, or my enemy, create a new material, which we're going to call enemy. Because we want it to be all red, right? We're going to change the albedo value here all the way to the right. So it's going to be this red material. And you know what? Let's make it so that our enemy is shiny and metallic looking, right? So I'm going to increase my metallic up and my smoothness up. So it's like a total shiny element on the shiny enemy, like this. So when we see the enemy, it's going to look like really shiny. Okay? Scary shiny too. Right, so kind of in the middle. So I've kind of got my metallic at 0.5 and my smoothness at 1. If I really want to, I could also change the shader type to specular setup, right? And if I was to do that, I can change my specularity a little differently. But I like the metallic look, so let's go back to the regular standard setup here, like this. Okay, I need to pull this material, this enemy material, onto the capsule, the enemy. So I'm going to click on enemy. I'm going to go to my enemy material and pull them into just drag and drop it onto the add component section, and there he is. Okay, cool. So I got my enemy, but I want to have also the marker. So let us make a copy of my marker for my player because I've got all that work done. So here's my player marker. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to duplicate it with a command D or Control D, right? There it is. I'm going to take this marker. I'm going to put it onto my enemy. Here's my enemy. Now notice that the marker isn't really there. It's actually on the player right now, right? So I got to make sure that it's centered around the enemy. So I'm going to zero it out, but only the positions, the transform, not the rotation. So I'm going to change that to 0, 0, 0. Right? And I want to kind of make it so that it drops down. Actually, the position where it was on the player marker had a position of minus 0.797 Y. Let's make it minus 0.75, just so that way, 0.75, just so that way it's not too close to the ground. And the same thing we'll do for this enemy marker. So we'll say the enemy marker, which we'll rename as marker, inside the enemy, 0.75. Oops. Did I make it 7.75? Minus 0.75. There we go. So minus 0.75. There it is. And now the marker is wrong. It's using the green arrow. We need to use the one with the red arrow. So what we want to do is we want to drag and drop a different material on here. Right now the player material is there. We want to drag the enemy marker material on there instead. There it is. So now it's the red marker. Now, I don't want to see my enemy marker, and I won't, because it's the minimap. It's still in the layer minimap because I copied it from the player, right? If it's not copied, you want to move it to the minimap layer. Okay? That's important. Okay, now if I run the game, again, we're doing this iteratively, right? I can see two things. I see my enemy with the shadow, right? And I don't see my minimap arrow. How come? Well, because my map is actually showing everything, right? And it's also seeing the enemy, right? So I wanted to exclude the actual enemies themselves. So I need an enemy layer. So I'm going to kind of make a new layer. We're going to call this the enemy layer. There's the enemy layer. And we're going to assign it to the enemy. Be careful. We don't want the enemy layer to be assigned to our marker, just the enemy. So when it asks you if you want to make sure that it goes to all the other subcomponents, you want to say no, just this object only. Okay, cool. Now let's take a look and see what it looks like. Well, first, sorry, I got to change my Minimap Cam so that it does not include everything. It calls the enemy components. I won't see my enemy. Now there's a good preview of what it's going to look like down here. Let's check this out. So I've seen my enemy. Yay, there's my enemy on the board. Now it's pretty. You know, I noticed that that even though I can see my enemy, there's a couple of issues here. One, my landscape here is pretty bright, right? And it's actually taking away from me being able to see my markers a little bit clearer. It's good. It's accurate. Notice even if I turn, it'll actually turn my player's rotation and everything else. That's good. But my problem is that it won't really take a look at. I can't see my characters very well. So I need to kind of delve this down a little bit. Now there are some tricks to get this done, right? And we're going to need this layer anyway, right? Because we want to cast some lights from the enemies and all that kind of stuff, right? So how would I do this? You guys are all tired today, right? I want to duplicate my terrain. That's one way to do it, all right? But if I do that, if I duplicate my terrain, all right, now this is small terrain, so it's okay, right? There's other ways to do it as well. For example, I could create an image of my terrain as a texture, right? Dumb it down and associate it with another on the quad. Instead of it showing my terrain, it could actually show this image. So it's not really the terrain that's being reported. But that's the problem. Then this whole idea of the minimap projecting onto the texture, that goes away, right? So for our simple example, let's just duplicate our terrain. So we're going to go to our terrain, and we're going to go Control or Command D. And we're going to duplicate this. Okay, there it is. We're going to call this SubTerrain, right? Because that's going to be the terrain that's going to go underneath our terrain. Okay, there's a problem here, right, for our terrain. One is that the SubTerrain, right, should be on the minimap, right? That's got to be on the minimap. So we want to only see that terrain. So we're going to go on minimap only. Our SubTerrain. It's identical to our terrain, right? And here's the other issue. Our camera right now, our player camera, our Minimap Cam, sees everything. But all I wanted to see is stuff on our minimap, right? That's it. Nothing, only in that layer. Nothing on the regular layer. So let's take a look and see how we can do that. Again, I'm going to go down to Culling Mask. I'm going to choose nothing for a second. And then I'm just going to choose my minimap. So I'm going to see my minimap layer. There it is. Okay, but there's a problem here. Let's take a look. If I run this thing, right? Well, I see my minimap layer, right? But it's still pretty darn bright, right? It's still pretty darn bright. And I can, now that I've got this, I can add a separate light that only shines, this directional light here, that only shines on my minimap, right? Also, my minimap and the regular map are on top of each other. That's bad too. I don't want that to happen. I want it to be a little bit below. So how do I do that? Like grab my subterranean layer, right? And I want to lower it a little bit. So I'm going to go with my manipulator arms, and I'm just going to grab it, and it's going to go just below. We're talking just below, like a 0.05, minus 0.05. If I was to do this and play now look what I got. I got a little bit, I can still see my layer, And to show you this, if I was to go into my, it's still kind of colliding too, eh? I would probably see the collisions happen because it's not quite low enough. Let's go back. So again, here's my SubTerrain layer, right? And all I've done is point it down just a little bit, a touch. Just pull it down a little bit more. See the separation. So now we're about minus 0.1. There's definitely a separation there between the two layers. We're good. Okay, here's the problem. My problem is that my directional light's shining on everything. I don't want it to shine on everything. I want to cull, right, the minimap layer. So I want to kind of take that off. Now what happens is, I look back at my layer, it dark, right? It too dark, right? That's too dark now, right? So I need to add another directional light, right? That only shines on my minimap layer, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my directional light, and I'm going to say, you know, it's going to be the minimap directional light. So I'm going to just duplicate this. So Control or Command D to duplicate the light. There it is. Now it's twice as bright, right? That's okay. We're just going to call this minimap directional light. Minimap. We're going to get rid of the 1. So we don't care about that. Now where it looks like our culling mask is mixed, right? I only want it to show the minimap. I only want it to brighten up the minimap, nothing else. Okay, good. Now I have control over my light for the minimap. So if I play, now it's going to be just the same brightness as before, right? See? Let's dull that brightness down a little bit. If we can do that with our intensity for the light. On our minimap directional light, I'm going to pull this right down, right? So that instead of 1, it's going to go like down to like 0.8 or something like that. And let's see if that works. Until we can see the character a little bit better, a little bit more. Let's go down, pull that down even more. All I'm doing is dimming the light a little bit so I can see my other objects a little brighter. There we go. Now I can see my objects pretty bright, but my terrain isn't as bright. Well, maybe a little bit more. Yes. Let's pull it down to 0.5, in fact. Half the brightness. Cool. All right. Okay. So there's my minimap. I've got my characters in there. That's cool. I want my character now, my enemy, to chase me, right? What do I need for my enemy to chase me? A Nav Mesh and a Nav Mesh Agent is the answer. Those two things, right? When I want my enemies to chase me, they got to have these two things. The other thing I want to do is, you know, I saw Jay's game, Jay and Seth's, and I really like the fact that they have a light in front of the enemies, almost like their sight vision or whatever you want to call it, right? That kind of comes up, almost like an area that they can see, right? I want to create that effect, but I want to create it with a light, a lamp, some kind of lamp. But I only want to see the light on the minimap. I don't want to see it on the regular layer, right? So what I can do is for the enemy, I can click on the enemy object, right click, and I'm going to add another light. I want to make a spotlight. Now, right now, if you notice, it shines directly in front because the way I've oriented my enemy, right? It's my spotlight actually is shining the direction I want it to. Yours may or may not. If it doesn't shine this way, away from the enemy, you got to orient it so that it's 90 degrees from where it's normally set up. Okay, my spotlight is pretty white. Let's change the color so that it's enemy colors, like this. So make it red. And let's change the intensity way up so it's like 8 intensity. So it's like going to shine on the ground. And let's lower the spotlight so instead of being in the middle of the enemy, let's make it so it kind of goes towards the ground like this. Right? Now we're seeing it physically on the scene here. I don't want to see it. I want to hide the spotlight. And I also want to make this wider. I want to change my spot angle to about 60. And I want to change my range, right? Because right now my range is about 10. I want to say my visibility for my enemy is probably going to be about 50. Let's make this about 50. It's kind of long. I'm going to save that. Let's see what that looks like without adding any kind of complexity to the character. I see that, whoa, what happened? How come my minimap, my stuff went away? What happened? Well, there's two things, right? that are happening right now. I've got two lights. This light in particular, which I've named Spotlight, is culling. The culling mask is everything. I don't want it to be everything, right? I want the culling mask only to be my minimap. So say nothing, and then click Minimap. Okay, cool. Now let's check it out. Okay, cool. I see this here. That's cool. But now my minimap, oh man, what's going on? How come my minimap is showing really dark? You guys have the same problem. You should. See my map, but now my marker is really slow. And the reason why is when I add a spotlight on my map, in addition to my directional light, the spotlight takes precedence, right? So you got to be very careful what it does. Now it's going to lower the intensity of my main light, my second minimap light, and I can pull this intensity up back to normal, so I can make it go back up to 1. Be careful. Be careful, I said. Let me go to 1. And save. And let's try that. Still dark. How come? My light, right? And let's take a look at this. This, my minimap directional light, is not in my layer, right? I got to change that to minimap as well. If I don't change that, and if I don't change my directional, my spotlight is in the enemy layer, and I'm not seeing it anymore, right? It's not going to see my enemy layer. It's only going to see my minimap layer. My enemy's in my enemy, my marker, and my marker's on my minimap, and my spotlight's on my enemy layer. If I change this to my minimap layer, that also will make a change. Let's take a look. There we go. There's where that is. But I'm not seeing my map at all, my SubTerrain. Even though my SubTerrain is on my minimap layer, I don't see that. Okay. My camera, here's my player camera, which is my Minimap Cam, right? There it is. This is a good preview of what it's looking at, right? Remember, you can't see the regular layer anymore, right? And, well, my Minimap Cam is the default layer, right? Let's put this in the Minimap layer as well. So put that in there, if that makes a difference. So far, no. See it black. That's all I see, right? All right, let's do another thing. Let's take my SubTerrain, right? Here's my SubTerrain. And I'm going to do a window split here for a second so I can see both, right? Because it's important for me to try this out on both sides. So I want to see both the window and the scene to troubleshoot what the problem is. Here it is, right? So I want to pull the SubTerrain level. So here's on my scene. I've got my SubTerrain clicked. And I'm going to pull this up and down to see if there's a problem. So if I pull it down, I can see that, you know, as I pull it up, I can pull it above. And notice how it's black, even when it's up here. How come? That's a problem, right? And this is the troubleshooting that I got to do. If it's black up here, it's going to be black down there. It's just the way it is. And if I go back to my minimap directional light, notice how the culling mask is my minimap. That's where it is, right? If I go, let me just change this back for a second to everything, right? Even then, right? Even then, even though it shines the light on there, it's still dark. How come? Anyone have a solution for this? It's not rendering at all. My SubTerrain, right? My SubTerrain is almost like completely dark, like as if it's not being. Well, right now it's in the minimap layer. If I change this to the default layer, right, I can see it, but I still don't see it on my screen. All right, so this is the minimap layer. So if I go to my SubTerrain, and if I kind of raise it up or lower it, you know, I still can't see it. Even though my default, it's the default terrain now. So I know it's not, this is not the trouble. It's something to do with this, right? Well, why? Because my player cam, my minimap cam only sees, right, only sees the minimap and nothing else. So let's add a couple things. Let's add, first of all, my enemy, right? So I can see that for sure. And if I see, I can see that that capsule is visible now in the minimap. So I don't want that. If I say everything, I see the layer. It's back to normal, right? Because that's what this would be. This SubTerrain layer is in the minimap, is in the other layer. So it's all a layering issue. Here it is. If I pull it down, right, or I put it up, I can see that it goes up and down and it gets hidden as I go underneath a certain area, right? There it is. So that's the issue that I can see. So let's go back to my Minimap Cam. It's just troubleshooting we're doing here. So now instead of everything, I want to go nothing. So I see nothing. And let's add stuff one thing at a time, right? So I'm going to say, okay, only the minimap. There's my players again, all right? Cool, cool. All right, cool. Now I also want to make sure that the layer, my subterrain, is in the minimap layer. Let's do that. So let's add that in. Oh, and this is where I have a problem. I don't see everything because it's above the marker. All right, so let's just, on my subterrain, I'm going to just drag this down a little bit. So it's below the marker. Okay, cool, now I can see that, I can see the terrain, see it? But I can only see it when the light is shined on it from the spotlight. As soon as I added that spotlight, it messed me up, right? How about my Minimap directional light? Here's my Minimap directional light. It shines on everything, right? I don't want to shine on everything. I only want it to shine on, only want it to shine on my, my Minimap. Okay, cool, now I can see it, but it's not bright enough. What about if I bring the intensity up a lot, right? And would that solve the issue, right? Because it's a directional light, right? So it should be able to see it. Bounds intensity can go up. Whoa, that's bad, it shouldn't be doing that. It's only on the Minimap. How come it's showing my light over here? Well, because right now, on my subterrain is visible. Look, notice how it goes invisible. But if I go down below a certain point, I can see it. So what would be the problem here? Any suggestions? I want to have my light shine, but I don't want it to shine on areas I don't want. Let me change perspective so you can see what I'm talking about here. There's the subterranean level. Subterranean level is black right now. Okay, I know what blew this thing away. I know it was the spotlight. So let's get rid of that for a second. Let's just turn it off, right? So spotlight's gone, right? And I know that the terrain was working fine before because I was able to see it, right? And I know I had my directional light, which is my regular directional light, that was able to see it. So if I add out the minimap, I should be able to see my minimap again. There it is, right? My minimap sees the directional, my directional light sees my minimap now, so it lights it up. Well, what happened to my other one, man? If I turn that on, right, my minimap directional light is on, right? How come it's not seeing my minimap anymore, right? How come? Again, if I go to everything, right, it's lighting up everything too bright, right? It actually makes it completely white because I've turned up the volume a lot on the light, like to pretty brightness. But look at the minimap below. See how it's not affecting the minimap in any way? Why? It's not passing through the first layer. Through the first layer in order for me to see my minimap, right? Well, what if I move the light down? Because that's kind of important, right? If you can't see my layer, that would be a problem, right? Now, if I move it down below the layer, right? Well, even when I change the intensity high and low, right? It doesn't really do much because my my layer is also being seen by my directional light. So if I turn my directional light off for a second, my other light still is not shining. My directional light, so I'm gonna do that change. My minimap directional light is still not working. Notice how it's not shining in there at all on my minimap, even though it says everything. Right? And if I was to move down my subterranean level, move it down to here, and if I take my directional light, minimap directional light, move that down, even if I was to rotate the direction, so if I just change the direction so I can see it like this, so I'm kind of rotating it a different way, right? Still no effect. So what would you do in this? Guys, what would you do in this case? How would you fix it? Any suggestions? Guys, no suggestions. You guys are quiet today. Right? Well, let's try getting rid of it. Actually, let's get rid of the spotlight that I had in here before. My directional light I want to put back. I want to get rid of my spotlight, right? For a second. That was the cause of the break, right? And I only have one minimap directional light, which is my intensity is 1.7 right now, right? I'm going to tone that right back down to 1, right? And actually, let's just get rid of it. Let's get rid of my directional light too. Yay. Okay, that's good. See what it did? My regular directional light, which is here, is above, but not shining on my minimap because I can't go through, right? If I was to bring up my subterranean level, so my subterranean level, if I bring this up to here, it doesn't shine because it doesn't shine down on my subterranean level. It doesn't shine at all, right? Because my directional light is being, even though it says everything, right? My layer, and also shines on my minimap, my layer is underneath, right? Okay, so let's copy it again. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to Command D, Control D to copy my directional light. There it is. Okay, now if I bring my directional light down, this new one, right? It doesn't really matter where it is actually in the scene, but if I bring it down just so that I can identify it's different. And if I say minimap, so nothing, and if I choose minimap, it should light up my minimap. This is good. Sometimes you get glitchy stuff like this happen, right? Just FYI, right? So my minimap is lit up by my second directional light, which I'm going to rename again to minimap directional light. Sorry guys for this glitch, but it is what it is. There it is. Only lights up my minimap. That's all it does. Okay, cool. So I've got light on my minimap. I can reduce it, the intensity, like I was thinking I could do before. So I can drop it down a little bit. Now notice how my characters aren't dropped down, right? My characters are quads, so they don't receive shadows and they don't cast shadows. So their intensity won't go down. But I can increase my light, my background just a touch, so I can see that the geometry, right? But not as bright as the top layer. Not at as an example at 1. Should be at 0.9 or 0.8. There we go. Okay, now let's add that light in my enemy. So I'm going to add my enemy. I'm going to add my spotlight. Let me try this all again, and then I'll update to GitHub for those people who can't do this. Here's my spotlight, which is inside, kind of on top. This is only going to call. It's going to be nothing except this is where I had the problem last time, except for the minimap. Yay, still works. And then change my intensity way high, right? And also change my color from white to red, right? Cool. This is my spotlight right now. And if you notice, also my my spotlight angle is 60. I want to make it 60. And I want to make my range 15, right? Like I said before. So it's kind of a big range for the camera. I also want to pull my spotlight down towards the bottom of the enemy, right? Like I did before. So here's my enemy. And when I use this one, I'm going to pull my spotlight so it's kind of down near the ground. And again, sometimes what's important to do is kind of hover over here so you can see what it looks like. There's a spotlight. I don't want to be too low, but I want to make it so that the point of the spotlight is kind of at the head of the enemy, like this. There we go. And my spotlight seems to be at around minus, let's make it 1.3, minus 1.3. Okay, cool. So my spotlight's at the bottom, near the bottom of the enemy. And now we got to make the enemy move around, right? Okay, cool. How do we do that? Well, let's add a nav mesh to my terrain. That's the next piece. So I'm going to save my scene. I'm going to click on not my subterrain, but my regular terrain, right? And create a nav mesh on this thing. So I'm going to click on my navigation window, which I've already put next to my inspector, right? And you can get the navigation window from your Windows navigation area. And what I want to do is I'm clicked on my subterrain, on my terrain, not my subterrain, my terrain, and I want to click bake. That's it, bake. What it's going to do, it's going to put this blue layer on my terrain. Notice how it's broken in certain places, like this. Look, does that mean you can walk on this thing, on this area? No, the enemy will not be able to walk on the areas that it's broken. Okay, cool, so we've got my nav mesh there. But on the enemy, before we save the enemy prefab, on the enemy, what I want to do is click on the inspector, is add another navigation component called Nav Mesh Agent. So I'm going to click Add Component, Navigation, Nav Mesh Agent. I've got my Nav Mesh Agent, but I need a script in order for this thing to work. I'm not even going to touch the values here right now, right? I need a script. So let's quickly make one. All right, how do I do that? I'm going to go to my scripts, right-click, create a new C# script, right? We're going to call this thing enemy AI. That's all it is right now. I'm going to double-click on the script so I can bring it up in my editor, which is mono-develop. One day. Come on, mono-develop. All right, there it is. One thing I like to do with my, when I create a Nav Mesh agent script, is make sure that I have some modification of the class. What I want to put in here is require component, right? And in here, I want to make sure that when I attach the script, I want to make sure that the type of component is a Nav Mesh agent. So I want to make sure that anything that I attach the script to has a Nav Mesh agent present, or else the script won't run. It'll give me an error. Otherwise, it'll be weird, right? That's number one. Second thing, I want to add in some public properties, right? Public instance variables, public instance variables. And one of them is going to be called this public Nav Mesh agent, which I'm going to call it agent. And I'm going to drag and drop my Nav Mesh agent in there, right? And that's all I need for that one, right? Nav Mesh agent. Okay, and that actually that's going to appear. This Nav Mesh agent is going to appear on the inspector, right? The other public property I'm going to need is the target. So I'm going to public, and I'm going to make a vector3, sorry, transform, which is going to be called target, right? There's my target. So that's going to be my player, obviously, right? And I also need some private properties. So here's my private properties, our instance variables, let's say, members. And in my private instance variables, I want to have a private vector3 object that I'm going to call destination with the underscore. That's the destination that I'm going to have for my Nav Mesh agent. Inside my script, in my start, I'm going to say this.agent then is equal to my game object. I'm going to kind of set it up. My game object dot get component, and I'm going to point to the Nav Mesh agent, right? That's built into my component. This will work. It'll make sure that it points to the Nav Mesh agent. If that's true, do I really need to make this Nav Mesh agent public? And the answer is no. I can probably move this into a private area here. Call this private, right? And let's make this where it says agent. I'm going to make this underscore agent to keep with our theme of private versus public, right? There it is. So this agent, this underscore agent, is this game object. The other one I want to make a reference to is this destination. So this dot underscore destination then is equal to this dot underscore agent dot destination. Because an agent, all Nav Mesh agents have a destination, someplace that they're going to go, right? And we're going to set it to the destination that we're going to create. Right now, it's just a vector3 object. Okay. Next, I want to create some basic stuff that my agent's going to do. So this dot agent, right, dot update rotation, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that's equal to true. So I'm going to update the rotation. So when my agent chases me, it changes facing. It actually starts facing me. It may not be true to use this if you're using a 3D character, right? Because the 3D character will change direction on its own, right? But here I want this Nav Mesh agent to turn when it's looking at me. I want to do the same thing with position. So agent dot update position would also be true. I want to enable that. If it doesn't do that, then I'm in trouble, right? Okay, cool. So I can change rotation and change position. Why do they have these values? Why do I have position? Shouldn't it always change? Shouldn't it always change to position? Well, the answer is actually no, because you can make a turret with Nav Mesh agent that can look at you, but not necessarily follow you, right? So the turret can always look at your direction, wherever you are, as long as you're within the Nav Mesh that you can see. It'll look at you, right? So that's another way of doing it. And that's why they give us this little option. So position and rotation are really, really important. Okay. A couple more things, a couple more lines in here. I'm going to do if. Here's an if statement. If my vector3 distance, and so I'm using the distance module, right? Which is, I'm going to use this dot destination, right? That's one of the things that I'm looking at. This dot destination and this dot target dot position, right? If the destination and the target position, right? If they're separate by at least, let's say, I don't know, greater than 2 meters, right? If that's true, then chase me, right? If it's less than 2 meters, then you're probably close enough to hit me, right? So you don't need to chase me anymore, right? That's what this is. So check to see, ensure target is at least 2 meters away. That's what this does, right? And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say this dot underscore destination, right, is equal to the target dot position. So it's going to update that. So my target position is going to be updated as a new destination. And this dot underscore agent dot destination, then I'm going to set the destination to this dot underscore destination. So what this is doing is it's saying, hey, as soon as I've acquired a lock, run at him. That's what it's doing, right? It's going to run at me as soon as I've set my target, right? Questions around this script? All I'm doing here, I haven't put it on the enemy yet, but as soon as I put this script on the enemy, it's going to start following me as long as I'm on the enemy's on the nav mesh, which is the main terrain. Okay. Okay, let's look at this. So first of all, I haven't set the script up to the enemy. I've got to attach it to the enemy. So we'll do that. So we'll go, here's my enemy, and I've got my script, and I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. Okay, good. Now it should show my target, and it says none. Well, I'm going to take my player, right? I'm going to drag and drop it into the target area here for my enemy. So my player is the target. Yay. Okay. Speed is pretty drastic. Let's cut this down to like 1.5. So it's not going to come at me too fast. Right? And just to test it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my enemy away from my player just a touch, so we can't see him inside the minimap. Right? And let's run this thing and see if it works. All right, there he is. Oh, it's coming at me, man. Oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid he's the red dome, and he's going to follow me around. Take a look. And as he follows me, right, the light that casts is not casting on me. It's just casting on, the SubTerrain, right? See how it looks? Oh, what if I go to the mountain? Can you chase me here? Nah. Right? Oh, wait. Hey, you're not supposed to go here. How come? Whoa. Okay, so you can see where it's going. So actually, it's moving around, and it's going to chase me. And when it gets to me, it's going to push me, right? Or it's going to stop within 2 meters. See? Okay, cool. So we have motion for our characters. Let's add one at every corner of the screen. Let's see how fast they come at me, right? So first, how do I do that? I need to create my enemy as a prefab. I'm going to go to prefabs. I'm going to drag and drop my enemy in there. There he is. Now he's my prefab. And from a top-down view, right, I'm going to click on my enemy and just kind of scroll out here. Really a lot. And kind of zoom in here. There. And my enemy's clicked on. And I'm going to change my enemy so that it's way over here, right? I'm going to duplicate him by Control or Command D, right? And I'm going to move my second enemy way over on the other side, right? Way over here. And we'll do the same thing, Control or Command D, and we'll move our other enemy on the other side over here. Gotta be careful, right? And you know what? We'll put one in the middle just so someone can get me faster. Right? So kind of zoom out and Control or Command D. And we'll put one in the middle of my screen. So it's kind of, this is a problem. Look how it's buried over here. This is bad. This would cause a problem for my nav mesh guys. So I gotta be careful where I put my enemy, right? So if I click on this enemy, I want him at least above the screen somewhere. If I was to focus in on him here, so I can see him, I don't want him to float necessarily, although he will fall. But I want to put it so that he is at least touching the ground. And I should probably check my other ones out so that they don't they're not buried. That one's not buried. Enemy number 1's not buried. My enemy, of course, is not buried, but let's just check just to make sure. Right, none of them are buried. Now if I run the game, right, they're all coming at me, right? Whoa. And I should see all the enemies coming at me, and I see some of their thing. They're looking at me. Whoa. And he's going to chase me, and so is this one, right, in my mini-map. Right, and it's trying to come at me, but I know this area here is warded, right, against the enemies. Wait a minute. Ah, see, you went around. Ha ha ha. Oh, I can hide over here. Whoa. These are pretty nasty dudes, man, when they come at me. Look, trying to get me over the mountains. Right? And you see where I'm going with that, right? So I see my mini-map, and I see me, right, and I see my enemies, and they're going to come at me, and they're going to start pushing on me because there's a bunch of them. Right? They're going to try and push to get it in order because they're all going to be at least 2 meters away. Okay, cool. So, complete. Minimap is done, right? Save my scene. I'm going to save my project. And I need to do one more thing. I need to show you guys how to do a build really quickly. So what the hell is a build anyway, right? Well, in order for us to publish a build, we need to have our scenes already in there. And if you've already done your game, you should already know how to do this, right? We need to have our scenes in there first. So I'm going to go to my File, Build Settings. Notice that my scene isn't in there. I can click Add the current scene, or I can drag and drop my scene in there. There's my scene. And I want to go to my player settings for a second. My player settings. Let's take a look. If I go to player settings, notice that I can add a default icon and a splash image, right? Well, where do I get that from? I get that from my screen, my game, right? Let's do that together. So I'm going to kind of make that. So I'm going to say, I'm going to play the game. And when I'm in my play mode, right, as they come at me, I'm going to take this image, right? I'm going to control. You can do this on your machine too, where everyone's there, and then go, click. There's my image of the splash screen. That's a simple splash screen. Stop. Okay. And then what I can do is I can take the splash screen, which I've got right here, and I can include it in my textures, right? So I'll take the splash screen, include it in my textures right here. Yay. There it is. I'm going to kind of put it up here. And I'm going to take this simple splash screen and put it on my icon. And I'm also going to put my splash screen on my splash image. It's important for us to do this, right? Save. And now I'm going to do my builds. I'm going to say, go to my build settings. And under my PC, Mac, Linux standalone, I'm going to click build and run. When I do that, it's going to ask me for a location. I need to create a location. My recommendation is outside the assets area, create a new folder called builds. Inside there, create another folder called PC, Mac standalone. But you might have more than one type of build. If you're planning to build it for iOS or Android, you can have a different folder. And inside there, just call it the name of my game, which is probably going to be something like Minimap Killers, right? Minimap Killers, right? And then click Save. Here we go. What it's going to do, it's going to build up my game, right? It's going to put it inside the build folder. But remember, this is all the one I need from you. I don't want you to give me your 1.8 gigs of textures and assets. I just want this, right? It's going to take its sweet time doing this, by the way. It takes some time, especially when you have the things that I have, right, in my game. And once it's done, it's going to give you this little view right here. Notice how I have some options for a screen resolution perspective, and I can also make it so it's windowed. If I click windowed and press play, now it's going to start running Unity in a window, and you got to bear with it because here it is right here, right? So now my Unity is running in a standalone window, and everything is working. It's been compiled for the Mac. Hey, little enemy. All right. Doesn't do anything right now. They just chase me, right? But you can see how easy it would be to add a score and maybe a gun to kill these guys, right? All right, so I'm going to quit. Okay, I want to say one more thing. When we've done our build, let's save our project now. So we'll make sure our project is saved. We're going to save our scene. And we're going to close Unity for a second. I'm going to upload this to GitHub. Let's take a look at my build, right? So if I look at my lesson 13, if I go to my builds folder, and if I look at my PC Mac standalone, it's called Minimap Killers. It's 46 meg. Just that is 46 meg, right? But it includes a terrain, 2 terrains actually, 1 terrain on top of the other, which is kind of expensive. And there's other ways to do that, like I mentioned, right? It includes 1 character and a bunch of prefabs, and it's 46 meg. But it's not 800, 800 meg. All right. What size is my project? The rest of my project. If I looked at my assets alone, right, and if I would just look at that, and if I go to Get Info on the Mac, I can see that my project is about. It only shows 7.8 meg for my assets, right? Well, yeah, it's only 7.8 meg. But when it builds, it adds a lot of other bit code and everything else on the bottom of that to make sure that it runs on the Mac. On the PC, it'll actually include other folders that are not on the Mac, right? So because I'm on a Mac, I'm building on a Mac, I can build, I have a Mac build. I can't build for the PC on the Mac. Notice I didn't do that. I built a Mac compatible standalone play, right? Same thing with PC. You can't build for PC or for Mac on a PC. You have to have a Mac, right? Okay, let's upload this to GitHub. So what am I going to do here? I close down, right? So I'm going to go git add dot to add everything again. It's going to take its time, and git commit -m added Minimap Killers build. Minimap Killers build, which is all I've really done. And I'm going to git push -u again for unconditional origin master, right? And it's going to push everything up to GitHub. So if you couldn't follow along or it didn't work for you, if you didn't have the right version today, right, I recommend you update your version to version 5.23. It gives you additional features, as you see, right? And you can have the same code I've given you if you want to use it for yourself. If you're running a 2D game, and one more second before you guys go, if you're running a 2D game, you could do it by looking at the side, right? So you're actually looking at the side of your minimap. And it would work perfectly fine. The only thing is that it would see your entire level. Some tricks around doing that, right? So you may or may not want to do that, right? If you don't want them to see them. The other thing is people use fog of war for the minimap a lot, right? Because you don't want to show the entire map. You can do that too, right? There's other ways to do that as well with fog of war, almost creating an obstacle. Once you get there, you can clear up some of those areas. Through programmatically, you can clear up that area and add the new area that you can see into the viewable area of the layer. So you can change layers. And the way you do fog of war is there's these invisible objects that you pass through that are only available on the minimap, right? And when you pass through them, they disappear, these objects, like little spheres, if you will, right? And as the spheres disappear, you can see more of the layer, right? So for Monday, be very clear. I'm looking for your presentation. So I'm going to do your presentations on Monday in this class and Wednesday. Please have your presentation ready. Again, it's going to be a PowerPoint slide deck with at least about 7 slides, right? And also have your recording done on YouTube as a backup. It should only take about 5 minutes for you to do this, right? Just using the built-in tool. So go to live stream on YouTube, just like I've just done now, and stream your video for 5 minutes on YouTube. And all you're going to do is you're going to follow the same presentation format. You're going to use your presentation, do your little demo, right? And on YouTube, it's good practice for you for Monday, you and your partner, okay? Or your partners if you have more than one, okay? Questions? Remember that next week, even though your presentation is going to happen Monday, it's not due until next Friday, and neither is your the final version, and neither is your actual game. Your actual game, your final game for this semester is due next Friday at midnight. Okay, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.